Доброго дня, я Гліб Vyshlinski, виконавчий директор Центру економічної стратегії.
We are starting our today's discussion and presentation of the survey, lifting exchange limitations and capital flow liberalization, when and how. My colleague Maria Repko will present the results of the survey that we did with the support of the National Bank of Ukraine, as well as with the support of many experts. And then our colleagues from the National Bank, from the National Depository of Ukraine, and the organization EasyBusiness will present their views and will react to what Maria presents. First of all, I would like to thank all with who we had the expert interview, the JFK, EBA, American Chamber of Commerce, and many Ukrainian companies. We started from some short-term things, how currency limitations affect the behavior of the depositors to the bank. We were looking at more global topic, liberalization of the movement of capital, how and when it's better to do it. I will talk about consequences of introduced restrictions.
Для разных экономических субъектов. Остановлюсь на том.
I will talk about the international experience that we looked at. I will talk about the terms and conditions which are needed to get the currency market liberalized. And then I will talk about action plan for short-term and long-term period. The final objective is to have liberalized the movement of capitals. That is what many international agreements say. That is what we need to move to. And we have to understand which will be the most effective way towards liberalization. What will have fewer risks? Current regulation. We have limitations on export-import operations. We have practically closed economy in the state of crisis, but we see gradual restoration, which has a very negative influence on business. With that, the regulator cannot really influence the currency, and the crisis in the country does not allow us to talk about some real market. So the 15 companies which are working on export and export, we ask them the question, what is needed so that the currency is brought into the country, not taken out. The most popular answer was to create a predictable environment to ensure deregulation, and that is more important than stopping the war in the East. Deregulation and regulatory environment are very important to bring money into the country. If you cannot take money out, export money, then no one will bring money in. So that affects negatively bringing the currency into the country. For business, it is important whether it is easy or difficult to administer. Also, sale of 70% of currency income is also important, is also a limitation. The consequences of that are moving business into the shadow, and also the sectors where you do not need to get permits for currency exchange become important. The deposits in hryvnia currency before and after levying limitations was chosen by the same number of people. And that was a surprise for us. But the consequences of that is that the transactions will move towards the black market. For rich people, these are shadow agreements on foreign securities. That segment is being serviced, and for the whole population, that's undeveloped financial market and shadow transactions on buying the dollar. If we generalize it, we will see that the current currency regulation leads to decrease of investments and business activity, increases the shadow sector, leads to corruption and to low trust to hryvnia and financial regulators. What can we say about international best practices? We looked at the countries that implemented liberalization: Poland, Iceland, Israel, Malaysia, Argentina, Turkey. We have many documents on that, and we see that the limitations are used when, like in Ukraine, they deplete the possibilities to affect the market or influence the market in any other way. With that, the world economic idea is that these limitations should be just temporary, and they should work only in the period of the crisis. They should help the country come out of the crisis, but they should not be the protection of the of the currency. These limitations are introduced in large scale, and only then they are efficient. During the liberalization, we understand that the inflow of the capital in the country is easier to control than outflow of the capital. And talking about limitations, the experience of countries shows that every other limitation leads to more administrative expenditures for business regulator and the whole of the economy. And also, what is the principle of selecting the instruments? How to better work with limitations. The experience of those countries shows that direct limitation should be replaced by price limitations, which is taxes and some economic factors. Instead of direct prohibition, you are allowed, but you have to pay something for that. Direct foreign investments and investments into shares are safer for the economy than currency loans. They don't create the bubbles, and this is long money in grivna, which means this is good investment. When people are talking about liberalization, they talk about liberalization of direct foreign investments and then only a movement to loans. Grivna currency, the priority is investing, removing limitations on grivna instruments. The currency crediting is still dangerous, and in this segment, these measures could be stricter than in grivna segment.
So this slide shows how liberalization was applied in different countries and what is believed to be optimum from the World Bank point of view. First, the liberalization of FDI should be done. It should be accompanied with the adaptation of legislation and transfer from liberalization of communication of decisions. That is, the decisions should be communicated and instead of permanence, and the liquidity should be strengthened when there is a weak control in banks. Then in some years of liberalization, liquidity collapses in the banks unless there is prudential control. That is, the state should control risks taken by big banks and put prudential control in place. Now we can start our work in this area. The next step is liberalization of the FDI outflow and other long-term flows. That is what Ms. Gontareva mentioned. This now prevents foreign companies from investing to Ukraine. At the same time, liberalization of other financial flows should take place. This is this also includes investments to abroad. We have slightly heard what was said at the previous briefing devoted to the corporate governance. This is extremely important, and development of the internal capital market. When we have all these components in place, we can start full financial liberalization and start investments abroad. We have some part of population who actually invest. These are either cash dollars or foreign accounts, and we should focus on this problem. What are preconditions for removal of current limitations? First, we should successfully restructure our state debt, our national debt. Then we should reach some stabilization in the bank market. We should reach surplus in our foreign trade, and we should accumulate sufficient exchange reserves. For absolutely full liberalization, we need to reach budget deficit up to 3% of GDP, national debt lower than 60% of GDP, inflation lower than 10%, and strong banking system, because when there is weak banking system and liberalized capital market, then the system cannot cope with this volatility of the market, and bank system is collapsed. This was in Ireland, in Israel, and some other countries. Financial stability should be ensured. This says the NBU reserve should be at the level of $60 billion. From today, it seems a huge figure. Then there should be a flexible exchange rate, well developed into domestic financial market, and well developed and regulated, and in order to ensure that investments of the internal investment companies are invested here. And of course, again, strong prudential supervision. In a short-term period, we can do some modifications today. Modification of limitations for trade operations is possible. Full removal of limitations for FDI and shareholder capital inflows to Ukraine, in order to bring, in order to buy a share. Foreign direct investor has to carry out many steps, has to make many steps, while everywhere in the world this is done via pressure one button, and this deprives people and from this. These reforms should be harmonized with the EU legislation, because if we wish to see our market fully integrated, we should start work on this today. We should work on clearing of the banking system and on tough prudential supervision. And from Israeli experience, we learned that there should be notices there should be notices about each step. That is, the companies had to inform about each transaction exceeding $50,000, for example. This allowed Israel to proceed smoothly from one system to another. Strategical prospects. Two companies attempted to remove all the limitations. This was done by Israel in 1977 and Turkey in 1989 with similar conditions, with high financial deficit, with economic difficulties, and unfortunately both countries entered deep crisis, and later Israel, 6 months later returned all the limitations back. When 1 year ago the countries shared their experience and learned lessons at the conference in China, they all mentioned that removal of limitations and liberalization should be carried down gradually. Czech Republic and Estonia removed all the limitations rather quickly, within 5-10 years. And of course, they did it gradually. And Israel, after the first attempt of liberalization, 10 years later, after first attempt, and Poland, they had been liberalizing their current accounts very, very slowly for during 15 years, for example. Of course, for Ukraine, we may recommend the Czech and Estonian example. Strategically, we suggest to decide the depths of liberalization and to make decision about fundamental limitations. Then we should decide about the stages of liberalization. We should establish benchmarks and accompanying reforms. Then we should have the reserving instruments, taxes. This could be developed with participation of the IMF and strengthening institutional capacity of the regulations, NBU and committee. So our approach to the exchange liberalization and to currency liberalization. So the first, we need to develop the realization plan, then coordinated, communicated to the stakeholders, carry out liberalization, both short-term and long-term measures, and finally we will reach our objective. I would like to draw your attention that all the materials on the survey and the analytic research upon which the presentation is based is on our website, CH, etc. You may get it from me. And now I would like to give the floor to Oleh Chupriy, Deputy Head of the National Bank of Ukraine. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank to Maria Repko and Glib Vyshlinski for this interesting and meaningful presentation. I will comment on the major aspects of it and describe how the National Bank sees this liberalization. As to the liberalization in general, there are no doubts that it is needed because it is able to push the potential of the country, attract FDI to the country. On the other hand, we cannot see currency liberalization separately from the NBU's opportunity to carry out its independent monetary policy, because these two are very closely interrelated policies. Also, it is very important to coordinate currency liberalization with monetary policy, fiscal policy, regulatory policy, and supervisory policy over banking system. What are the risks of currency liberalization? These are risks related to the speed up model of liberalization. Our country already has a negative experience of late to 20s when the capital which inflow was used to balance disbalances in current accounts for financing of the budget deficit, and it resulted in the crisis which we have today. Short-term loans which commercial banks involved for crediting real estate market, and while this market shaped to asset bubble, and it collapsed with the crisis of the lending and borrowing banks, and the liberalization process is seen by us in 3 stages. Those 3 stages will be divided into phases, and each phase is considered to be fulfilled when some specific preconditions are satisfied. First, we need to accumulate sufficient international currency reserves. This is intended to be used as a buffer in case of any negative scenarios appearance in the international markets, when the import cost may rise, or the export prices decrease. The next important precondition for currency liberalization is fiscal consolidation, when budget deficit should be covered by market borrowings. We should step back from foreign currency borrowings to finance budget deficit. Also, we need to stop crowding out effect when the state tries to borrow money from the market and thus competes with private companies, and actually thus it absorbs all the resources which might be used by private business for its development. And another important precondition is development of financial sector. First of all, capitalization of banking system. As of today, in BU, carries out stress tests and diagnostics of the biggest 20 banks. By the end of this month, we will have the results of this test, while the stress test of the entire banking system will be finished by mid next year. this stress testing is necessary in order to understand the capitalization needs in the banks, what inside the loans should be closed by the banks, and after stress testing, the NBU will sign with each bank's a special document, a special agreement about capitalization commitments of each bank, and the deadline for capitalization will be 2017. Also, removal of these balances in current account is important precondition.
One of the mechanisms, insurance mechanisms, to remove the disbalance is a floating course, and the National Bank is now implementing this policy. Inflation reduction is another important task and prerequisite for further liberalization of the capital market. We started from the end of this year.
Наша задача на протязі декількох років знизити рівень інфляції.
Our task is to reduce the level of inflation. We believe that it should be reduced to 5% of the level which corresponds to the countries with transitional economy, which Ukraine is. As to proposals which are in the presentation, we agree that first we need to liberalize current account, export and import from a real sector. This will be a big positive impetus to the development of the economy. Another important thing is liberalization of direct investments. These investments are investments into technology, management, the investments directed towards Ukraine becoming part of production capacities.
Хочу сказати, наші колеги з EasyBusiness наразі готують.
Our colleagues from EasyBusiness are developing the roadmap for liberalization, and I believe that the work done by the Center of Economic Strategy could become the basis for the development of the concept of further liberalization. Thank you. Now I would like to give the floor to Roman Sulzhyk, who's the chairman of the board of the National Depository of Ukraine. Roman has an experience of daily work on the international currency market. Participant of the uprising in Ukraine, that's what newspapers write. Roman will be able to say what is important to achieve the objectives that we mentioned. Thank you, Glib. It's a pleasure being here. It's easier for me to speak Russian, unfortunately. I hear what you are saying. But the main thing I see that will allow us to do all these things, to reduce inflation, that is development of free market, so that the currency finds its equilibrium. And when the currency is in equilibrium, it will close. Yes, but where it finds equilibrium. But when we used to live in market conditions, this all will be normalized by the market. I made a short presentation.
С точки зрения рынка, потому что когда я приехал в
When I came to the US from the Soviet Union, for me, well, in the USSR everything was quiet. I was mathematician. I see some graphs on TV. Some person says we increased the rate from 5 to 25%, and I think what he's talking about. So for me that was a shock how it happens. I could not imagine that in 10 years I will graduate the New York University and I will be trading these interest rates, but that taught me that liberal economic system is better than a closed economic system. When you grow up, you understand that the life is not white and black. There are many great things from the point of view of economy. There are liberal countries which are prospering, where they respect the private property and market, and there are closed countries, Venezuela, the Soviet Union, the North Korea, and we need to make analysis. Does it take us closer to Northern Korea, to the US? When I make some decision, I would like us to create the Anglo-Saxon liberal model. Stop being the field of miracles. My friend Olivier came. He is managing a fund of several $1 billion. Why are you here? He says, we have rich Ukrainian clients and we help them take money out of Russia. And I say, Olivier, do you invest something into Ukraine? He says, Roman, are you crazy? I understand that if there's no respect to private property, I will not invest into the country. How do we switch from the country where there's no respect to private property to the country which has this respect? I believe that our financial sector and the financial infrastructure is the growth point that will help us get connected to the markets of this part of the economy that we can reform, not looking at some who surround us. As we tell the investors, we have the war, but look, we have the normal market, we work according to your rules, we are ahead of the whole country. And I believe that creating normal rules of game for all participants of the market and following these rules of game, and that has been the problem in Ukraine. We were saying we will create the rules, but then later, while we are in power, we would like to have something for ourselves. To create the rules for everyone is the main task. Financial institutions, Masha was saying about that. These are the philosophic debates going on all over the world. The financial institution, is it to service the client, to control the client? The client comes, says, I want to transfer $1 million somewhere. Should the bank ask questions, where did you get this $1 million? In the West, traditionally, financial institutions were not asking them questions. Traditionally, there was absolutely liberal system, which has now become more stricter. and partially because America is controlling world financial system. It's like the mechanism of control. Here, traditionally, financial institutions were the institutions that has never been oriented towards the client. And we should not say that financial institution should be done like that. You don't need to get a permit, you have to inform. If needed, the regulator will punish. How to do that? Creating electronic platforms with equal access for participants, with equal rules. At the entry, you have to decide who is the participant of the clearing. It doesn't mean that any financial institution becomes the participant of a clearing, and the platform which is regulated by the regulator, by the national bank. There's a law according to which you get the license, but the infrastructure is a private organization. They can, or exchange, they can create their own rules of clearing. We say we have unreliable financial institutions and the level of trust is that low. We can write the rules of clearing that will say only these institutions are allowed to play in this field. And when you let them there, then you need to give them chance to market to function.
Да, с точки зрения, когда нам начать это...
The view of when do we start liberalization? Unfortunately, we need liberalization, but later. From the very beginning of our story, of our history, we are in such a regime. I believe we need to start liberalization from things which are mostly interesting for the market. And the most interesting instrument is not the state dollar securities, but it's grivna, to allow people to get carry-on grivna and to create infrastructure where local and foreign participants could trade between themselves, so that the national bank is one of the players, but it does not control the rules completely. That would be a fantastic objective. But for NBU, that's difficult because political will is needed, or courage is needed to say that now we cannot change rules of game anytime. Once we let people into the field, the rules of game stay. We can change the rules, but not during the game. It's difficult. What could be positive in the result if we create such an infrastructure? If $1 billion is traded a day, which is quite reasonable, that would allow this infrastructure to earn about $25 billion a year. We can get an infrastructure that will cost hundreds of billions of dollars. Now Ukrainian financial infrastructure cost about zero. And for me that would have been a big objective. We sold a quarter of Moscow exchange for 700 billions. And I'm so sorry to see that here financial infrastructure costs zero. If I would invest my money, I wouldn't know what to trade, what products to provide to corporations or persons. I see that the creation of the market is one of important tasks. Market instruments, what could we start with? Currency. when you buy dollar and hryvnia today, at the same time you agree to sell it at some price tomorrow. Each of those instruments has its interest rates in hryvnia. It could be used as an instrument of monetary policy. The currency in developing countries is one of the reliable instruments. And now the central counteragent, they say the central counteragent should be well capitalized. In our situation, it's not obligatory to capitalize the central counteragent. If we just create the central counteragent, we can make it without requirement of recapitalization. Free market doesn't mean that no one supervises it. The national bank is the main player, and the national bank, together with the regulator and the exchange, can set requirements to participants. And the threat that they will be deprived the access to the market becomes stronger than the threat of not getting a license. If you say that if you behave certain way, you will lose the access to the market. The currency, well, talking about the freedom of choice, to give the chance to Ukrainians to invest into foreign instruments, this could be the first step. To develop the infrastructure. In the South Africa, they prohibit to take money abroad. The first million rand, which is $100,000, you can export without the license, but then you need to get the license. But they created the quasi foreign instrument denominated in rands, in local currency. If you come to broker in the South Africa and you say want to buy shares of Apple in rands, that is the instrument which is registered at Johannesburg exchange. You can get the equivalent in local currency, and the share, if you sell it, you get also back the local currency equivalent. If that is allowed in Ukraine, you go and you say that I want to buy shares of Apple, and they say 10,000 hryvnias, you buy one share, then in some time you sell it and you get the same equivalent. That's guaranteed by Citibank and JP Morgan. That could be a very interesting instrument in short term that would allow brokers and exchanges to earn.
And now the microphone passes over to Artem from EasyBusiness Corporation, which works with the NBU on creating roadmap and currency regulation in Ukraine. Dear colleagues, today I will try to present tactical issues and present the action plan, which is implemented by NBU. Today we have launched a project on introduction of the new liberalization measures and targets. Objectives of the NBU are as follows. The output the expected output is a neoliberal model of regulation which will allow the national bank as a regulator to be operational and efficient regulator in the market without excessive bureaucratic obstacles for the market functioning. We have already prepared everything for the implementation of this course, and we are drafting legislation and monitoring the impact of them. The project results will be implemented under favorable macroeconomic conditions, and today the team project is already working on the matrix of instruments for currency regulation, and we also involve foreign experts. We plan to make analysis first and then make the final decisions on the measures. The draft of this project is open for broad discussion in order to bring expectations of the market in balance with the project. The project initiation is complete today. I would like to emphasize that the project outputs are coordinated in line with the final results and the conditions for these favorable changes. That is, we need some favorable conditions for implementation of some measures. These are macroeconomic indicators, balancing demand and supply for currency in the market, absence of outflow and lower volatility of currency. Today we work on two stages of the project. Kickoff and analysis of current system of currency regulation. The currency regulation system prescribes many measures for the market. On the other hand, it has inherited many negative aspects from the Soviet period. The major law prescribing currency regulations was Decree of 1993, which imposed the huge control over currency regulation and imposed excessive control of the state and regulations of the state. And the Soviet attitude towards currency regulation provided exquisite access rights to currency only to the regulators. Also, we involve foreign experts. Having analyzed the legislative base, we would produce matrix of instruments for currency regulations. There is a set of changes which could be implemented today. Some removal of some bureaucratic instruments may simplify access to currency transactions to some market participants. But of course, this will not influence supply and demand balance in this market. The results and strategy, which will be formulated based on our analysis, will be brought to public discussion of the business. The output of the project will be new liberalized currency exchange system. A big component of our project is analysis of international experience, and here I agree with what Marina mentioned. Currency regulations are used in the crisis moments, and they are aimed at reaching some financial stability, and when the situation is balanced, the measures are liberalized. The preconditions for it could be hyperinflation or and some similar factors. Very fast liberalization of the market may result in negative aspects, and the risks of the liberalization could be as follows. If the project outputs are applied under improper macroeconomic situation, they may strengthen volatility. This may negatively influence balance of payments, and under low investment attractiveness of the country, this may cause outflow of currency from the country. Thank you, Artem. We have very interesting field for discussion. On the one hand, there is liberal market preconditions. On the other hand, there are some limitations to it. I invite everybody to discussion. You may ask something, you may raise, you may express your opinion as to what was said by the colleagues. Yes. As for the presentation, I'm happy with it, especially the first one. I'm very grateful to Maria. As for the liberalization, liberalization may resolve many issues if we allow dirty money to arrive very quickly. Protection of private property might be improved. I have slightly different suggestion about liberalization. Of course, the capitals should move freely, but during the last 15 years, 80% of all the acts of legislation in the world were aimed at liberalizing capital flow, while only 20% limited it somehow. On the other hand, all the countries try to reach this free flow of capitals. Maybe we will just find a proper model for attracting the capital. There is a good instrument related to compliance. Definition of the capital. We should close the entry and make it difficult to outflow. That is what I wish to say. we need to have some non-standard approach here because the capitals flow freely everywhere. Any further comments? Good afternoon. I'm Yuri Prohorov, chairman of the Ukrainian Society of Financial Analysts. Thank you, Maria. Maria is one of the best financial analysts of Ukraine, and I congratulate this center with this interesting work. I won't comment on the targeting of inflation because I am an opponent of it. Here, in our today's discussion, I support Roman. Let us do everything quickly and then let's look at it. I started my career in banking system for 25 years. Our currency exchange officers were very unhappy with the decree of 1993. This was passed by Prime Minister Kuchma, and during all the revolutions we were promised to repeal the decree from 1993.
Если брать те годы, надо логарифмический масштаб или экспоненциальный. Совсем другие тогда были условия, и оно до сих пор нас вот тянет, не только этой какой-то гирей. Мы едем в этом трамвае, который там, может быть, как-то работал, и по этим рельсам идет Владимира Семеновича Гребенник, которым замечательно рулил господин Еременко, когда был министром курсом. Все знали, какой там будет курс, и он был, в принципе, нормальный. Потом, когда новые рельсы наверх там вбрасывали, мы по ним ехали. А сейчас уже вот с рельсов мы съехали, когда была либерализация до 32 курса, и поняли, что трамвай-то он же без рельс не ездит. Он трамвай. Пытались мы что-то, и что дальше? Мы заматерели, новое руководство Национального банка вернуло валютные ограничения, какие только могут. Опять в рельсы, и едем по этим рельсам, и говорим, сейчас исследуем время пути по рельсам в проекте, как нам с этих рельсов съехать, вот, либерализироваться. Давайте сделаем политическое решение вот, там, фракциями, исполнительной властью и монетарными властями. Отменим декрет 1993 года с 1 января 2016. У нас есть еще вот 3 месяца. Есть прекрасные юристы у нас, что, в этом зале даже сидят. Они напишут вам новый закон о валютном регулировании за неделю. Потом комитет, который там сейчас возглавит кто-то из другой фракции по банкам и финансам, рассмотрит его, внесет в зал, и все можно успеть сделать. Не надо или полгода, или 1,5 года двигаться. Давайте вот этот рудимент, который есть, отменим, сделаем что-то другое. Да, может, не совсем эффективное или не очень там хорошо работающее, но совсем новое. И будем с ним работать. И тогда и появится там у нас не какая-то там ОМВБ без лицензии, которая с 1998 года нет никаких инвесторов. У вас есть валютная биржа в стране, на которой не проводят валютных операций. А кто проводит валютные операции? Банки между собой нет. А кто? У нас банк с банками все отслеживает. То есть нет уже этого всего. И если там есть политическая воля и решение, ну, то есть спросите у кого-то, кто хочет работать по этому декрету. Ну, нет, наверное, таких людей. Ни экспортеров, ни импортеров, ни финансовый сектор. Давайте просто вот как рекомендацию сделать, что отменить его и там быстро комитетам реформ всем нашим, не там к 2017 году или к 2018, а разработать какой-то там с переходными периодами понятными Но это будет очень сильное решение Национального банка, я думаю. Спасибо.
Спасибо вам. Ну, честно говоря, предложение взять все и отменить похоже на предложение.
Basically, this proposal to take it and cancel it looks like take it and divide and share. We want to cancel this decree, but the topic of today's presentation is not just some resolutions of the National Bank, but the topic is liberalization, which is connected to the policy on currency rate. These are things interrelated, and to cancel something without looking at how it affects other is wrong. The legislation which is there, we want first of all to analyze it, to look at what is the model, where to go. Poland was going along currency liberalization. Israel cancelled it overnight. Poland was going along that way 7-10 years. I don't say that we need to go to do it during 10 or 7 years, but we need to start it. But to start it, we need to understand where we go. We need to analyze, to diagnose, to create the model, the concept, and then amendments to the legislation. That is the project that we are working on. If we would like to cancel, we would take it to a higher level, but the National Bank is responsible for that. This is our responsibility, that the inflation is big. We're not planning to put the responsibility for someone else. We launched the project, and we involve not just local experts, but the EBRD experts and others. The idea is to find the most optimal model and then to introduce amendments to the legislation. Yaroslav Kolesnik, Ukrainian Credit Banking Union. I liked the first report, presentation, but I paid attention to the second one. I talked to regulator because there were specific proposals there. The main thing is to show swaps. If the regulator puts that into their plan at least 3 years ahead, 20 years, this issue hasn't been addressed. It's a key one for further movement. That is why I thank that you mentioned that, but the regulators take that into account in your plans. And we will see how much market will be liberalized. For 20 years we are talking about that, but once this instrument is launched, if the instrument is not launched, then for 10 more years we'll be just talking about liberalization. Thank you. I just wanted to say it myself. We need to switch the focus from the word liberalization. We need to think about creating a functioning market. When we have the market, these people can trade according to some rules. It's not like regulator comes and says, today we are not trading because the inflation went up. To live according to the rules of the market is more difficult than you come to work and say, we cancel the market. It's easier to cancel and to say that the exchange rate is 21. The market is much more complicated. We need to increase rates for money not to run away. In America, the interest rates would go up to 20%, 16% were the rates on American bonds, because in the US they had the capital the capital was also going out of the country, and the America had to increase the rate up to 16% for 30 years to get back money, to get money back to the country. There's nothing bad in increasing or reducing the rates. When we talk about the tram, I agree with that. It's not easy to work in the market. Oi.
Credit banking sector, Georgia. We heard the interview by Ms. Gontareva in Zerkalo Nedelia newspaper, where the pace of liberalization is very slow, and many things are delayed till next generations. But I believe that there are some absurd limitations. Roman mentioned the limitation of property right. When you limit the right to withdraw deposits, and people would never come away, and the non-residents who are unable to bring even $20 to banks, this is an absurd, and limitations on currency procurement, that $3,000 could be bought. That is, you are depriving Ukraine from FDI and from other sorts of investment. No investors will come unless they are able to withdraw their profit. Why you do nothing? You would never finish this liberalization. The National Bank is not very pleased to introduce limitations, stick with them and listen to your reclamations, but we are not the monsters who are happy with the negative actions they are doing to people. Unfortunately, due to very unfavorable things in our economy, starting with the war, with huge corruption, with a huge outflow of currency, we had to introduce some limitations for investors. To come here means that they are sure that their money won't be stolen, that they won't disappear. All the measures which I mentioned, these are temporary measures. They are aimed at maintaining the value of national currency. We have a roadmap how to remove that limitations gradually. We have signed a special document with IMF. Of course, some of those limitations are very tough for the business. They limit a favorable business climate. But please understand, even when we remove all those limitations, it won't automatically mean that the investments will arrive.
Advisor to the President of Kyiv School of Economics, Igor Shumila. Very often I am the moderator, then I cannot express my position, but I'm grateful that Oleh paid attention at the title of our roundtable. Lifting exchange limitations and capital flow liberalization, when and how. I suggested even to mention when and how, to put it in the beginning, because that's the key. Oleg, you were told, and I have to tell it again. You together, I worked in the National Bank for 10 years. The biggest people in currency departments believed everything should be changed. I hope that you personally do not believe that the Ministry of Finance should implement a high quality policy, and Sulzhyk should implement the high quality policy. Everyone will make all the steps, and we will make the first one. I believe that the survey is of high quality. There's one phrase that Maria said. Most countries were introducing currency limitations after all monetary measures did not allow to get stabilized. We first introduced currency limitations, and then from the beginning of this year they tied up the actions of currency market and monetary market. The research gives a chance to speed up the research, the work. Maybe Artem doesn't know, but I'm sure that you and Dmytro Sulzhyk know that for 15 years in Ukraine, the matrix is being created, which shows all regulatory acts and their influence on direct foreign investments. There are two questions. First, removing currency limitations. When the representative of the National Bank says we want national currency reserves, at the same time there are limitations which do not allow to come here. You say, are we the monsters? Which one of you will say? How much does the National Bank have economic grounds not to remove limitations? We have to achieve restructuring. We have achieved it. We have to stabilize financial situation. We stabilized it. We have to renew economic growth. It has been renewed in the third quarter. Why cannot the National Bank remove currency limitations? The banks can return currency deposits. One of the members of the team of reforms, she's not the civil servant, she says, neither myself nor one of my friends will take currency to the bank. And Maria mentioned 5 key things. That is what could be removed. Now talking about liberalization, there are no countries which would quickly make liberalization of the movement of capital and get into a bad situation. This happens when they were liberalizing what hadn't to be liberalized. Poland is a good example. There's a high quality project. There's a concept of the new loan currency regulation, which corresponds to all the proposals that Maria mentioned. We need to look at what has been done with the assistance of Canadian experts and other foreign experts. And then we can ask how to implement this liberalization.
Денисе.
Больше не вопрос, а уточнение.
To clarify about limitations, we believe that after the 30th of September there will be signals, because you are saying about corruption, but corruption is an additional risk. We have payment for risk. If I know that there's no chance for me to get money back, I will not look at other opportunities.
Увеличение этого.
Now about 90 days, will this term be extended to 180? And what about punishment for this violation? Now I believe the punishment is not adequate. Or don't you know about that? The punishment for violation, it's not up to the National Bank, but it's up to the Ministry of Economy, State Fiscal Service. Three of us have to sit together and decide whether punishment is adequate or not. As to 90 days, the export from Ukraine of the products with low value added. There are other priority things which are in the pipeline. We are planning to get concentrated on the payment of dividends, reducing the norm of mandatory sale of currency revenues. If we cancel the sanctions about 90 days, if only the fine stays. Okay, that has been analyzed. Maybe Maria will provide comments. Yes.
Yeah, we analyzed the issue of 90 days, and from the figures of the National Day, from the National Bank, we saw very interesting figures. There is some number of enterprises which each quarter violate this norm about 90 days. Half of out of that amount violating enterprises amount to 0.5% of the amount of all the amount of money. That is, if 250 enterprises have violated actually, which means these are enterprises who did not report timely about $100, for example. That is for the counter parts of those enterprises, those negligent amounts of money and the delays with payments of them are not the problem, while in Ukraine this is violation. This, in our opinion, this is one of the issues which should be resolved and could be resolved via measures that won't influence the exchange rate. This one of those immediate measures which can bring immediate positive effects, and we will be happy to hear that this problem of 90 days is addressed, and about the 80% of the currency earnings in the exchange, mandatory exchange. So this is one of those steps which could be done immediately and simplify life, make life simpler for the business entities. Jointly with the Ministry of Economy, we discussed this issue. There should be specific threshold for such transactions, and actually we agreed with this, and now this could be done at the legal level, at the level of legislation, about 90 days. For Ukrainian companies which produce high processing products, they are able to approach to the Ministry of Economy and request for extension of that 90 days. And this requires some actions on behalf of them, but this is possible, and those companies are not that numerous. Yeah. Yeah, that is the way which we follow, but all that sanctions and state fiscal service and everything, this is for the sake of that 90 days. We should look at this more profoundly.
Дякую за такі змістовні думки.
Thank you very much.
Можете представитись?
Igor Oleh of Baker McKenzie Law Firm. I have a question. Since May, we suggested to the National Bank to introduce a separate regime of current accounts for companies non-residents in hryvnias and foreign currency. This instrument, which does not exist in principle in Ukrainian legislation, which sits apart from currency regulation, which could become the first step towards currency regulation. But unfortunately, after the meeting with the National Bank, we have the impression, as some experts were saying, there's no desire to change anything because there's a fear that there might be some consequences. What's your position? We discussed that. I can provide such a comment that we do not see that this is a priority For us, the priority is the currency limitations that we introduced in the beginning of this year. We were introducing them. There are many issues. We publish changes to this currency limitation. The situation that you are talking about is probably interesting, but from the point of view of serious inflow of currency, this will not produce a big effect. In any case, we have taken time out. To sum it up
Can
and to make our...
I sum up? I would invite Artem and Oleh describe the immediate plan of actions. There are now some people in this room, maybe some financial CEOs of many companies watch us on stream, and the currency exchange rate influence the business. And would you please mention that specific project work which is aimed at changing the situation in this sphere, to change the policy in this sphere, what you plan to do in short-term or long-term perspective, and what is the time frame within which the stakeholders will understand clear criteria about limitations and when they will be removed. I will start. In my presentation, I tried to show that stamps, we need quick actions which allow de-bureaucratize the system, and on the other hand, to make this on stable grounds. We expect that by the end of this month, based on the analysis, we will have the road map on liberalization, and this road map will be presented to the market and experts. And Maria mentioned that there is a set of macroeconomic indicators which define whether liberalization, this or that specific liberalization measure could be applied at some specific moment. That is, macroeconomic indicators may allow us to decide whether this or that measure could be implemented at the proper moment. I would add to Artem's comment that actually currency limitations which we plan to remove, they could be split in two groups. The first is quick fixes, which are aimed at removal of those limitations which do not influence on supply and demand, which do not influence the situation in currency market. As for the long-term plans, the objective of this very project is to develop such a long-term plan. I think it's a bit early to speak about a long-term plan. We described our approach today, and then we'll see. There is Dima Dmytro Sologub, who is in the room. We have one of the National Bank board members in the room. I would like to comment. You mentioned that the limitations should be removed. The about figures, $200, $80, $100, $30, $40 million per month, and $150 million. These are minuses. The National Bank reserves amount to 18 billion minus Russian debt maybe 3 billion. 18.3 billion reserves is enough for 4 months of import, while the IMF indicator is at the level 115 billion. The reserve of 13 with something billion reserves is the level of the last year. Okay, the position which you occupy, it determines your angle of vision, so to say, angle of perspective. That is what Oleg mentioned. We are not happy with our limitations. We are in negotiation process. At the beginning of the year, IMF we're not very happy with the limitations, but today they're not happy with removing it. Let's look at other countries. For Iceland, it took 7 years. For Cyprus, it took around 3 years to remove limitations. Of course, the NBU cannot make any commitments. It should stack with constructive ambiguity. That is, everybody should expect what may happen, but people should not know when definitely it will happen. So it's not so easy to remove all the limitations. And what next? That's why I would like to call you to further cooperation, because the work is, we have a difficult task. EasyBusiness is able to assist us in some technical issues, or sometimes we deal with very strategic issues. And when IMF insists that we are not removing limitations quickly, that's because credibility policy making will suffer. In the United States, then try currency swaps with the experts. Just try these swaps. I have a feeling that with this exchange rate of 23, with a 3% carry, market agents might be attracted.
Я хотел бы прокомментировать. На самом деле мы делаем своп.
We're making swaps with other banks to attract the hryvnia at 25 and give in 3 months. We can actively increase reserves, but there's no need to pay extra money. For the sake of the process, I see no sense in that.
Тогда, если вы говорите, что есть такой огромный спрос на эти свопы,
If there's such a big demand for swaps, if you give the chance to people to buy grivna, there will be more Western money.
а сколько миллиардов придет, если такой спрос на свопы, может быть, это и есть. То есть вот это тоже важная составляющая.
Можно немножко добавлю по поводу свопов? Да, вот если своп с Банком Швеции сделали, да, мы вот думали по поводу валютного законодательства. Может ли Банк Швеции из свопа купить УВГЗ? Нет. Он не продавал валюту, чтобы зачислить ее на инвестиционный счет. Ну, то есть это большая проблема для всех свопов. Это с одной стороны. С другой стороны, они не пойдут сюда, пока не будет положительных ставок, а ставки отрицательные. Ну, по сравнению с инфляцией ставки отрицательные, они не придут. Это с другой стороны. А в принципе, ну вот, самый простой пример: разреши Нацбанк сейчас торговать, допустим, марихуаной в кассах, никто не будет проторговать ей. Просто потому, что Национальный банк должен будет написать еще дополнительную инструкцию, как правильно составлять отчетность. И на самом деле это 25 лет в условиях ограничений, да, это накладывает очень серьезный отпечаток на банковскую систему. То есть даже если сейчас все либерализовать, ничего не либерализуется.
Дякую. Я так бачу, що в нас є вже кілька планів, тобто є, очевидно, план переосмислення того, про що сказав останній коментатор, тобто взагалі юридична основа, загальний підхід до регулювання, відхід від політики, що дозволено лише те, що не заборонено, вірніше, все, що не заборонено, дозволено. З іншого боку, те, що ми бачимо, коментарі людей, які, власне, працювали на ринку, це і Ярослав Колесник, який ще в 90-х був одним з провідних валютників в Україні, і Роман, який працював нещодавно на міжнародному ринку. Це говорить про те, що очевидно, що в межах, зокрема, і того проєкту, який буде впроваджувати EasyBusiness разом з Національним банком, цей діалог між людьми, які працюють в ринку з боку приватного сектору і з іншого боку регулятор ринку, тобто він має продовжуватися, і мені здається, що навіть з того, як ми бачимо, ця дискусія закінчується, цей діалог буде продуктивним, тому що тобто це різний досвід, який додає до прийняття правильних рішень, і загальна макроекономічна політика і бачення, те, про що говорить Дмитро, звичайно, має бути загальною рамкою для того, щоб вже приймалися ті рішення, на які ми давно чекаємо. І очевидно, що само по собі прийняття подібних рішень і прискорення цього процесу буде нести позитивний меседж для ринку і поліпшувати очікування. Дуже дякую всім, як доповідачам і учасникам, так і тим, хто коментував або брав участь віддалено в цій дискусії. Сподіваємося побачити вас на наступних подібних дискусіях із цієї, з інших тем. Дякую. Так, і дуже дякую Маші за те, що вона зробила таке класне дослідження.